Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about the rising phenom Hans Niemann, who has vaulted into the attention worldwide pretty much. Even non-chess players know a great deal about the cheating scandal, which has kind of rocked the chess world. Now, Magnus Carlsen implied that Hans cheated in the bishop versus knight endgame in St. Louis, okay? But I analyzed that game under Stockfish, and I could find no such evidence of cheating. You know, Hans played the entire game, and Magnus' main complaint was that he, seemed to possess superpowers and, play incredibly well in critical positions when he seemed kind of sleepy or not concentrating that much. Again, it sounds like complete BS nonsense to me in the absence of clear and convincing evidence. As a retired lawyer, I know what is required to prove a case. And as far as I can tell right now, you're miles away from proving anything. You gotta realize that cheating in slow man-to-man chess over-the-board play, it's difficult. Why? Because people and the cameras are all around you. How are you gonna cheat? Before, at the World Open, they used to have people running into the bathrooms and consulting with their computers and electronic devices. But nowadays, they have people, watching in the bathrooms now. So that's more and more difficult to do. Now, did Hans cheat online? Well, of course he did. He admitted to it. But should casual chess online be taken seriously? Like over-the-board rated play is. No, it's fun, it's casual, it's not serious. If I go play some bum in the park and, I cheat or something, should that ban me now from playing in serious tournaments? No, of course not. Anyway, some have made the claim that Hans cheated in over-the-board play, man-to-man play, in the past because his moves seemed to match the computers 100%. Again, we're going to examine these claims and look at one of Hans' past games from 2020, over-the-board game between the rising star Christopher Yoo, rated 2563, who had white, versus Hans, rated 2688, who had black. And let's also put it under the watch of Stockfish and see if the moves of Hans match that of the computers. Started out as a Roy Lopez. This is Hans' favorite opening. Very solid. Now, I've been emphasizing to you beginning and intermediate players that it's not the opening, it's really how you play it. The player matters more than the opening does. If Bobby Fischer took up the Roy Lopez, you'd see him winning with the Roy Lopez as black, Okay, Berlin. Now that's new. This is Christopher Yoo's prepared line against the Berlin. This is typical of the young player. They seek out tactics. And this is a very, active way to meet the Berlin without resorting to the very boring Berlin Wall which is often leads to an end game. That's best. Okay, the computer totally agrees with Hans' first few moves. Of course, that's the best move. Bishop a4 is best. You don't want to take that because black's going to have the two bishops. Now, that's a lemon, actually. Bishop e7 is book. Now, this is a move, d6 is a move that Steinitz played, but I feel that white is better after d6. So, all these claims that Hans' moves match the computer's is not being shown by the game. Now that's kind of playable. That is actually a playable move, but I prefer knight d4 first, and then would follow bishop d7, and then I like to take the knight on bishop takes knight on c6, but it'll probably just amount to a transposition. Okay, now the computer gives queen d4. Queen d4 is probably the best. And white's best strategy in many of these Steinitz lines is to try to get e5 in. Okay? But knight d4 is a move that I've played myself, and many of my master opponents like knight d4, which is still a good move. That's forced. Now Christopher Yoo is following the computer's recommendation. It's also possible here that knight g4 is a move because I really want to prepare knight e5, stop e5 above all, and then maybe try to get queen f6 in maybe. So the computer recommends c5, and Hans in fact played c5, but I think knight g4, yeah, see, the more I look at knight g4, I realize that if knight g4, knight c6 is possible. And white wins a pawn, so c5 is best. Yeah, I agree with that. Now it looks like Hans has to take, and this is why I don't believe that this was a computer-aided game, because Hans played what looks like kind of an inferior move. I think all the engines are recommending bishop takes knight, but the fact is that after pawn takes bishop, I think that white's better. So does this prove that Hans was not aided by a computer? I think this lemon by Hans does give some, see, the computer doesn't like that move. Now white is ahead 1.3. This is an indication to me that this game was not computer aided, because black is getting into super trouble right in the opening. Now white has some really real ways to get the advantage. One way is simply playing c4 and knight c3 with kind of a Maroczy bind, and I think black is really kind of struggling here. The other way is now I don't see anything wrong with the immediate, maybe e5 looks interesting at this point. The immediate e5. looks kind of like a fascinating try to me here. Just go for it, you know. But anyway, let's look at what happened here. Rook e1 is, the problem with rook e1 is you're telegraphing your punch. You know, it's about as subtle as, you know, in a bar, raising your hand to strike someone. That's how subtle that move is. Obviously the threat is e5, and so black's next move is forced. Now, sorry guys, I don't know why I keep doing that. I go too fast sometimes. Black's move is obviously forced, and Hans' move is the same move that the computer recommends. So here we have a clear computer match, but that turns out to be a lemon. I mean, it looks so good. You're threatening e5. There's such an obvious threat. And now queen d7 is the move the computer likes, and in fact that's the move that Hans played. So, you know, black is kind of in big trouble. I mean, this is a critical position. You know, we always have to, you know, look to see if there's a computer match, and there is, you know. Now that's a bit slow. You know, white has to strike quickly. The problem with white's position is he wants to get e5 in, but now that move is the same move that the computer likes. So for the last couple of moves, Hans' moves are matching the computer's. Now look at this move. The computer thinks this is a big mistake. And look at how the evaluation jumps to 1.7. Black is already better. So this is a lemon. He's getting too greedy. And now Hans doesn't miss the opportunity to strike in the center. And this is a great move. Now this is a computer match. Hans played the move the computer likes. This undermines the base support for the knight, which is this pawn here. So now the knight is feeling kind of unstable right now, because I'm about to capture. And I may also consider that, but this is the way that, you know, black has, because he has the two bishops, has to start breaking, you know, opening up lines for the bishops. And this is a terrific move by Hans. Now white, because he made that first lemon, has to follow up with another lemon. And now black pretty much has to take. This is the move the computer likes. White has to take. And now Hans has a big choice of whether, you know, he wants to sack a piece. And this is where the game becomes a bit unclear. And a chess master has to combine the intuitive approach to chess, which, well, this kind of feels right based on my experience in my past, you know, knowledge of the game, that now I can kind of sack a piece based on the knight has trouble developing. If the knight can't develop, well, the rook can't develop. And now, you know, white only has only has 3 pieces in play. Black has 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the king side, king is wide open. So yeah, let's just go for it. Yeah. So now we have, you see that in these critical positions, Hans agrees with the computer that you should sack a piece here. So there is some computer agreement with Hans. And now, having said A, you have to say B. Now this is the position that Hans had to evaluate prior to making the sack, because now white can, if he wants, white can trade queens. So this is the critical position that Hans had to see prior to making the sacrifice. The fact is that if you go queen f5, let's look at the line the computer gives here. Rook g8, rook dg8, queen d7, king d7. Now the knight is hanging, okay? But if the knight moves back, black comes crashing through and checkmates on the back rank. So trading queens is not going to get white out of the position. He's going to get crushed if he tries to trade queens. So Christopher Yoo played another move. Computer doesn't like that move. Okay. Now if queen f5 is white's best, then white just has a bad game. But this is going to lead to some interesting play. Now here, this is very interesting. Look what Hans plays here. See, this completely disagrees with what the computer wanted to play. I mean, the computer recommends in this position rook h e8 and says that black has a decisive advantage already in the position. Now, one of the most difficult things in chess for a lot of you intermediate players is to evaluate messy and complex positions, and this is clearly, it's a mess, okay? And the way you evaluate the positions is you don't, a lot of you guys like to count up the material. Like, okay, you got a rook, I got a rook. You got a couple of pawns, I got a couple of pawns. Wrong, wrong, wrong. That is not how you evaluate a position. When you're in a kind of a messy and complicated situation like this, you have to evaluate how many pieces does black have in play, okay? The rook is great. This rook here is great. It's in play. It's attacking the pawn. This rook is great. It's going to come down and threaten checkmate. This queen is extremely active. This bishop is a monster. So anyway,